57talk.com, Gary Cubetta back again from Scottsdale, Arizona. And with me today, one of the greatest in-ring workers in the history of professional wrestling, Buddy Landel. Buddy, pleasure to have you with us.
Wow, what an introduction. It's a pleasure. It's an honor, Gary. Thank you for having me on.
Appreciate it very much. Now, you started in professional wrestling in 1979. Buddy,
I did.
What led you to get into wrestling?
Well, I wrestled in school. I played all sports, and I wrestled in school, and was kind of, in the 60s growing up when it was regional, like the state of Tennessee where I was from, they had wrestling in Nashville, Memphis, Chattanooga, and Knoxville, and those that I just mentioned were, all separate territories. And in Kentucky had a territory, Florida had two or three. I mean, when I got in, there was like 20 territories across the country. And my the regional outfit that was wrestling here, I had watched since I was a little boy. But I never really talked about it, and I never went to the matches or anything. And I just was kind of like a closet wrestling fan. And that was my introduction into wrestling. Just every Saturday it would come on. Like millions of young boys across the country, just had to have my wrestling fix every Saturday.
Back in the glory days. Now, Buddy, did you first wrestle with Angelo Paffo's ICW?
Well, actually, what happened was, some of your viewers might remember, Ron Fuller had Southeastern Championship Wrestling here. I think it was part of the NWA, but anyway, it was Southeastern Championship Wrestling out of Knoxville, and there was Ron Fuller, Robert Fuller, Jimmy Golden, Kevin Sullivan, Dick Slater, Ronnie Garvin, Bob Roop, Orton Jr., and all of those guys. And they had a split. They had a big fallout. And Bob Orton Jr., Ronnie Garvin, Bob Roop, two or three more guys started a company called All-Star Championship Wrestling out of Knoxville and ran opposition to the Fullers. And that's when I first started, when I was 17. And I was with All-Star first. And then Bob Roop, of course, I was living with Bob Roop and his wife, and training, with Malenko and with All Star. And anyway, it evolved and went up into the ICW up for the Paphos.
So you're 17 years old and you're in this semi-outlaw promotion, just started up.
Well, actually, I started hanging out with the guys when I was 16. What happened was, is that right after football season, when I was 16, my sister, her girlfriend was a camera girl that filmed the wrestling for Channel 26 in Knoxville, and it was my sister's best girlfriend, and she introduced my sister to Barry Orton, which they started dating, and dating's a southern twang, but when they started dating, I was living with my sister and came in one night, and Barry Orton was in there, and we were wrestling around, and I guess we tussled around. I tossed him, and I guess he was a little bit impressed, and he said, "Hey, why don't you come down and meet some of the guys and start hanging out?" I was almost 17 years old, and I met Malenko, and, so that was my introduction into wrestling, how I actually got started.
Who was booking that promotion?
What, All-Star?
Yeah.
I think it was like a committee. It was Bob Orton Jr., Ronnie Garvin, and Bob Roop. I think it was, and Malenko also.
Were they drawing at the time?
Drawing?
Yeah.
Lord, I can't even remember. I mean,
well, when you started out, how many fans were watching you at these, with the guys?
Well, no, I comprehend what you're saying. I'm just trying to remember back that 30 years ago. I think we drew a little bit, but eventually it folded. We were drawing nowhere near, because Fuller was a millionaire. I mean, he had the money, the TV slots, and he had the NWA backing him. So it was basically like a little outlaw group with great big names in it.
Yeah, I remember seeing some of the videos of the promotion that was on. It was a small promotion, but it had some big names.
Yeah, it had very big names, and I was clueless, okay? When I got into the business, these guys were actually laying in wait for each other, carrying guns and actual real challenging each other. And I mean, I remember riding with Ronnie Garvin and them talking about, shooting these guys and going. And they actually had gotten to a couple of bar fights here in Knoxville. I think it was Dick Slater and Buzz Sawyer with Bob Roop, Morton Jr. And there was some fist fights. So I mean, I actually thought that's the way wrestling was, you know.
Buddy, what was when you first started wrestling them? What was your first impressions? Were you in awe of being the center of attention in the ring? Was it more physical than you thought? Was it less physical than you thought?
It was. I was in tremendous shape. I mean, I was a freshman in high school, 6'2", and then I would drop down to 185 to wrestle. And so, I mean, I was used to the training and stuff. Of course, Malenko did a lot different training than what I was used to in amateur wrestling. But it was awesome. You know, I mean, 16, 17 years old and having, you know, seeing the women chase you and holler at you and all, it was a shocker. You know, it was definitely addictive.
Well, for any young guy to be the center of attention for women, did you notice that immediately that women were, you know, really attracted to the guys in the ring?
Oh yeah. Yeah, and what was funny was we had a guy like, his name was Big Boy Williams. His real name was Ralph Derryberry, and he, you know, wore, flannel underwear, white flannel underwear with black trunks over them, and carried a teddy bear to the ring and acted like he was from an insane asylum. And I just remember the women going after him, and I thought, man, you know, this is going to be a breeze.
Like catching fish in a bathtub, huh?
Oh yeah, like shooting fish in a barrel, man.
Yeah, there you go. So you move over, the promotion folds, and you go to ICW. Now I've talked to Lanny Poffo about ICW, and he doesn't even like to remember it. It was not a happy time for him. He said his dad and Randy really were into it. What can you tell me about ICW?
Well, I was living with Bob Roop in Knoxville, Sunset Real Apartments, and Bob was in a real bad car wreck, and he wasn't going to be able to work for 2 or 3 months. And he says, "Listen, I'm going to send you up with, you know, Savage wants you, you know, young, good-looking babyface. They want you to come up and work." And ironically enough, a guy had sent me. He had kept all of the posters of ICW, and I saw some there was like 30 posters on there, you know, with me on it, you know, from '79. And anyway, I digress. But it was dark. Looking back on it now, it was dark days, man. It was really taxing. It really was.
Tell me how, because the people want to know. What was it like working in one of these Mickey Mouse? It was kind of a Mickey Mouse promotion. It was definitely outlaw.
Well, but I didn't know any better because that's all that I had known.
Yeah.
So it was normal. It was normal to me. But what happened was Bob Roop says, "I'm going to send you up there." Well, you know, I was with Bob every day, man. I mean, he was like my brother. I mean, we trained together, ate together, slept together. We did everything together. Went to the gym. I mean, you know, for a whole year. And Malenko lived right in those same apartments also. And you know, I'd just walk down to Malenko's and we'd go train. And so, you know, Bob Roop was like a crutch for me. You know, and then he threw me up there, and I didn't know anybody. Of course, I knew Wharton Jr. and Garvin and all them, but, I mean, you know, guys like that wasn't going to, you know, basically, they would take a young guy like me and set my chair in the corner and face it towards the wall and say, "Look, don't speak unless you're spoken to." And that's all I knew. I mean, it ain't like nowadays, you know, a guy gets in and he gets a push or anything. I mean, you know, that's all I knew. I turned my chair to the wall, and if I was spoke to, I would answer. So it was really, really dark days. There wasn't a whole lot of money, and you know, and they had me living with a midget. They had me living with this midget called Wee Willie, and this midget hated me.
Oh,
he hated me with a purple passion. But they told him, "Look, you know, Landel's living with you, so just like it." He had a 1-bedroom studio apartment, and so I was in there, and he was just forever just being cruel to me because he liked the women, and the women liked me, and you know, when the girls came over to the apartment, you know, they would favor me over him, and
Buddy,
blah, blah, blah.
Buddy, did the midget get any women?
Well, yeah, after I was finished, I mean, you know, I mean, I'm not that cruel, but no, he had his, you know, there's a certain group of women out there that likes midgets, and so, I mean, he got his fair share, but I thought, you know, I think I was his hobby just to be mean to, you know. And so what I would do was I'd put itching powder in his bed, and he looked like a dog scratching, you know, that little bitty arm coming up and scratching. And I'd take his little tuxedo he wore to the ring, and I'd nail it up on the ceiling, you know, where he couldn't get it. And
I thought you weren't that mean.
Well, I mean, eventually, I had to do something. I mean, there's really cruel things done to me. I mean, Bob Roop would give me a rain jacket that they took a dump in and blew their nose in, and all of these, waste products would be in my bag when I came back, from the ring or something, or woke up the next morning, and so it's just tit for tat.
So, what were your first impressions of Randy Savage?
Maniac, intense. First off, when I first went up there, before I moved in with the midget, he had me sleeping. He had a gym, and he had it was a storefront, okay? And it had these big, like the old downtowns of, these smaller towns that have these businesses that have these big glass picture windows in them. Well, we would train, and at nighttime, me and this female wrestler named Donna Day, we would sleep in the storefront window at night. And then eventually, I upgraded and moved from the storefront window sleeping with Donna Day to living with Wee Willie, the midget. So
the payoffs were that bad?
Well, I mean, I'm 17 years old and I'm making, $300 a week back in '79. I thought it was, I mean, looking back on it now, it was horrible, but I mean, it was, I never went without a meal, and I mean, look, here's the bottom line. I mean, you've got to sacrifice all the, creature comforts of this world to, be around, no matter what it was like. Remember, I was around Bob Roop, Bob Orton Jr., Randy Savage, Landy Poffo, Ronnie Garvin. I mean, some of the best talent God's ever put on this earth. And what I did was I just constantly picked their brain and watched them and learned from them. And I mean, it was invaluable for shaping me who I would become, So to say that it was really, really bad would be a misnomer, because I really, really, got to be around some of the best talent in the business, Remember, these guys grew in Florida and everywhere they had ever been, prior to doing the outlaw thing. So they had a proven track record. So I was with some, tremendous, tremendous talent.
Yeah, well, no question. The talent was tremendous. It's just a lot of the things that went on behind the scenes, especially with ICW, very archaic. What was Angelo Poffo trying to do with ICW? Were they just trying to survive, or did they have a vision that they were going to be able to, grow bigger? What was going on behind the scenes? Did you follow any of that?
Well, no, not well. Just from what I picked up. Remember, I was at a time where my ears were open and my mouth was closed. So, just what I picked up. But retrospectively, looking back, what I pick up is I think Angelo Poffo envisioned himself, being a, something like a Bob Geigel, in Kansas City, or something along those lines, and it being a major territory. But all things equal, I mean, we're in Kentucky, okay, and we're wrestling in the backwoods of Kentucky. So, they had some great houses and some great crowds, but I mean, you're only going to grow so big. And so I think that his vision was bigger than the territory that he was in.
Yeah, people don't realize that ICW did have good houses. They wrestled. Did you guys wrestle in Rupp Arena at the time, or wasn't it built yet?
I don't remember wrestling in Rupp Arena till I went to Jarrett.
Okay.
Yeah, around 81, 82. So I don't remember us going to Rupp Arena. We could have, but I don't recall it.
Did you go to Jarrett immediately following ICW?
Oh, let's see. That was 79, 80, 81. No, I had went to, actually, ironically, came back home to Knoxville for a few months and was training just by myself, and got a call from Malenko, and they were opening up Sunbelt Wrestling in Jacksonville, Florida. And it was me, it was Malenko and Jody and Dino, his two sons. It was Jimmy Valiant, Austin Idol, Louis Tilley, Don, what's his name? I lived with him. Don and Dottie.
Carson?
No, not Carson. Don, he was promoter there for a long time in Jacksonville. He just passed away. His name escapes me right now, but I lived with him and his wife, Dottie. But anyway, and then that's where I met my wife in 81. And, so that went for a little while, and they were trying to...
Hold on, because I vaguely remember that promotion. It was only in business for a short while, right?
Very, less than 6 months.
What the attendance poor? I mean, it sounds like a pretty good lineup of stars.
There again, you got guys that probably had some, backing, financial backing, and had the contacts for the big arenas, with Don, and and they had, Austin Idol and Jimmy Valiant and Malenko, and it just never, it just never really took off.
What was Austin Idol like back then?
He's always been great to me. I mean, he was, even when I was just a dark hair, he'd been in the business a couple of years, very respectful, very nice, full of compliments, pocket full of good intentions, great advice, just a wonderful guy.
Do you still keep in contact with him?
I haven't spoke with him in a few years. He was doing some kind of business down in Florida, and then occasionally Lawler will try to get us all together in Memphis, to do something in the last years. But I mean, kind of everybody grew up and got through playing wrestling, and went through, and got older in the meantime, and kind of went their merry way. So.
Sure. So after Florida, where's next?
I talked to Grizzly Smith and went to Bill Watts in '81.
I remember that. And you were on Mid-South TV, and you were really developing the character at the time, right?
Well, no. Actually, I had started out, and they brought me and Jesse Barr in, and we were just underneath baby faces, lived next door to Junkyard Dog, and rode with him everywhere. And it was just, these first years were formative because I got to be around these great talents. Now, Junkyard Dog was a great talent because he was, Louisiana was like 60-70% black, and he was, like a god there. So me riding with him was like my first really taste of what it was like to be around a rock star. You know what I'm saying? Where people mob your car and selling out the Superdome, selling out the Coliseums, and I mean, so that was my really first taste of looking at someone and saying, man, hey, I like this. But Dog was wonderful to me also, and so I stayed there probably 6 months. And
what'd you think of Bill Watts when you first met him?
Taskmaster. Listen, you got fined there. You got fined and you got fired. Number one, the rule was if you ever get into a fight with a mark outside the building, if you lose the fight, you're fired under any circumstances. Bar room, wherever you go, you get into a fight with a mark, you lose. So you're fired. So you had to be kind of actually tough to work for Bill Watts because there was a lot of scrapes that you had to fight your way out of. But, Bill was fair. He paid really good, and he was fair. I mean, if there was a tornado coming through and it blew the town down and they still had wrestling, and if you were late, you got fined. There was no excuse to be late. There was this no excuse policy. No excuse to have a bad match. The first 3 matches wasn't allowed to throw a punch or a kick. It was all wrestling, and it was just an eye-opener for me.
Buddy, a lot of people have been critical of Bill, and I've interviewed Bill extensively. Looking back at it, do you think there was a logic to the way he was?
Absolutely. I mean, he taught you that when you came in, this is your position. Your first match, I don't care, on bended knees or bending over who you try to kiss. You're not getting any higher than this position, so just, relish the moment. And what it taught me is that I had a job to do, and it was a supporting cast member of the main event. It wasn't, like guys now go out and, try to outshine everybody. There wasn't no outshining anyone. Everybody had a spot. Everyone had a position. And it taught me self-discipline. It taught me, you absolutely had to learn the business. I mean, you had to learn the business, and that's what I learned from Bill. I love Bill Watts and credit him with basically who I basically turned out to be, as far as, my wrestling abilities. He helped shape me more than anyone, and I love the man to this day, and speak with him often, but I love the man. He's a good man.
A very good man indeed. July 4th, 1981, the Superdome, New Orleans, Louisiana. Opening match, Ken Mantel defeats Buddy Landel. So you were there, buddy. You were in the Superdome back in 81.
There you are. I was there in 82 also. I think in 81, 82, and 84. Yeah, that was, that was something,
Yeah, here we go again. May of 1982. Opening match, Jesse Barr, Buddy Landel. Oh, you worked up to a draw this time. So you're working your way up in the world of professional wrestling.
Imagine that, doing a 20 or 30-minute time limit draw in the Superdome, man, in Louisiana. Well, that wasn't trying to pull teeth with pliers. It was tough, man.
But, Buddy, you go into the Superdome back then, and going into a football stadium situation was not common in wrestling. What did it feel like? What was it like in the ring? You look out, there's all these people. You're in this giant stadium. How is it different from a normal match?
Well, it was different because it was dark. You couldn't see out. The only thing you could see is the rows of people around the ring. So, by the grace of God, it was dark. So I didn't see all these people. And only in intermission and when the lights came on in intermission or before or after the show did you really, get to experience the magnitude of being 20, 21 years old and looking out and seeing that. It was unimaginable.
You spent a lot of time with Junkyard Dog. People, Sylvester Ritter, people know about him. They've heard about him. They've seen his matches. They've seen his interviews. But people really don't understand. What was he like in private? How'd he treat you, and how'd you treat him?
Oh, listen, I love Dog more than anything. I was the only guy I was the only wrestler to attend his funeral, and it was real sad. It was the hardest I've ever cried. And I just lost my father a little over a month ago, and I didn't cry that hard at my dad's funeral. He was really close to me, not only me, but my family. And he'd called me a couple of months before he passed away and told me he loved me. And he'd never done that before, I mean, it was kind of like when Bruiser Brody was murdered. I was the last one to eat with him, me and this midget called Butch Cassidy. And, I will get into this in a little while, I'm sure, but he said something to me. It was like they both had a premonition that they were going to die. It was totally, it just took me aback, It was just, I hate the word surreal, but that's what it was. But Dog was, he was the star. Look, he could have had his own dressing room. He could have, done anything, but he was right in there with the young guys, the new guys, giving advice, and just, if I had to sum it up in one word, Dog was encouraging. Encouragement was his big thing.
Now, Buddy, JYD couldn't work.
He wore his celebrity well. I'll tell you that. He was kind to everyone, but if you smarted off to him, he would put you in your place and fast. But he wore his celebrity well.
Now, JYD was not a great worker in the ring, but it really didn't matter, did it?
No, because it's the way that Watts had everything, programmed. He would just feed him guys to beat. And it was just the genius of Bill Watts. That's all it was. It was the genius of Bill Watts. I doubt any place else in the country could have pulled that off. But Watts knew what he had, and he knew what he had to do, to get the job done. And he had Dog there, and Dog had the characteristics to do this, to be the superstar. No other black. I mean, even after Dog had gone and went to the WWF, I mean, they tried to bring this guy Master G in, and all this other stuff. The only other black that was comparable to Dog would have been Butch Reed. And Butch, I love Butch to death, but Butch couldn't pull. Nobody could. Not even her and Dad. No one could pull off what Dog did, because he was great on the stick and he was believable. When those fans met him in person, I mean, this guy was 6'3", 6'4", 285 pounds, and had a 35-inch waist. He was would walk into a gym and warm up with 400 pounds on the bench. He was awesome.
Buddy, was the attendance consistent every night? Were the houses pretty much full?
I don't remember a show that wasn't sold out. Wow. Never. From 81, 82, and 84 when I was there, never do I remember a show that was not sold out, ever.
Do you test that to the area or Bill Watts?
Bill Watts not only had Junkyard Dog and a good supporting crew like Paul Orndorff, Ted DiBiase, and so on, but he had he had Grizzly Smith that was and Ernie Ladd. He had Jack Curtis and Gil Calkin and all of these promoters, that were everybody did their job. There was a ton of money to be made, so that was incentive for everyone to do a good job, and that's what they did, and, everybody made money, and it trickled down, it trickled.
Now, you saw Bill during the glory days, and later on, a lot of people said that the game had passed Bill by. When you heard people say that, did you think back to the early 80s and think, I don't really think the game has passed Bill by? That always bothered me when people would say, the game's different. Bill couldn't adjust.
That's horse crap. I mean, that's like saying Jerry Jarrett couldn't adjust. That's ridiculous. God give those two men, two of the best minds in the business, and both of them will tell you Eddie Graham was the best. And I never got a chance to meet Eddie Graham, but nonetheless, I mean, Bill Watts, that's why they were still calling him in WCW in the 90s to come in and fix the problem that somebody else had broke. The reason why Bill Watts didn't go any further than he did was because he was type A personality, and by God, they were paying him to cut people's contracts. And it rubbed some people the wrong way, and the guys started stomping their feet and yelling and screaming, and they got pissed, and Bill to this day, Bill to this day has a tremendous mind. That don't ever leave you.
Well, we've interviewed him, and we've interviewed a lot of people in wrestling, and I can tell you that his mind seems as sharp. I didn't know him when he was younger, but I don't know how it could be much sharper, and he's 70 years old today.
Yeah, he's a millionaire, man. I mean, no matter what he tells you, he's got money, and he didn't get that money by, he got that money by making a ton of it, and even, and so, I mean, he's got a proven track record. He was brilliant.
So you leave Mid-South, and the next stop is, now we're going to Memphis, right?
No, the next stop would be, let's see, this is 1982. No, this was, where we at, 1981?
Well, we're 81-ish, yeah.
Okay, 81, from there I left and went to Crockett for a short time, and then I went to Memphis, or it could be vice versa. But anyway, it was either I went to Memphis for, I believe, no, it was, because I remember Bill Watts telling me in downtown building in New Orleans that we were, he said, I'm sending you to Crockett for 6 months, and then you're going to go to Jarretts. So,
who was in Crockett when you were there?
Oh, God. You name it. Roddy Piper, Wahoo, Flair, Blackjack, Ole and, just everybody.
It was
from
stacked.
The 70s.
Yeah, it was
everybody.
Yeah.
Well, Watts told me, he says, look, I'm going to send you to Charlotte. He says, you're going to go over there. Some of these guys make 6, 7, 8, 10 grand a week. He goes, some of them have made money. Some of them have saved it. Some of them have lost it. He goes, I want you to go over there. He goes, and watch these guys and study them, and you'll, Watts was like a father to me. That's the way he talked to me, So I went over there, and that's,
And what were your initial impressions the first time you went into Crockett?
Well, they was some long trips. I mean, and you're around guys that made tons of money, and everybody was nice to me, and I just, worked real hard, and pretty much that was it, and finished that up, and went to Memphis. And it was the same in Memphis, too. I mean, it was, it was like the experience. It was just, 6 months of just keep on, doing your job. And then I guess the big thing came in '83 when I went to Puerto Rico. That's when it all changed.
Okay, tell me.
Well, Tom Ernesto Sr. was booking Puerto Rico, and I was the Terry Taylor, Steve Kern, Stan Lane babyface. I mean, it was just, in Memphis, there was just so many of us, the young, good-looking babyfaces, the Tommy Rogers, the Bobby Fultons. I mean, it was just everybody was pretty much the same, right? Well, about that time, they're starting to do the Fab thing and the Fantastics and the Steven, and Stan were doing their thing, and so they were evolving in that about the same time that I get the phone call from Tom Ernesto Sr., and he says, would you consider bleaching your hair blonde and coming down here as a heel? I said, well, I'll do my hair green. I love it. He goes, well, I'm going to push you and put you on top. Well, I really didn't know what the hell that meant, push you and put you on top. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know what that meant. All I knew was I was going to still get to feed my wife and I, right? So I bleach my hair, and I go down to Puerto Rico, and they're taping 6 hours of TV in the TV station, every Wednesday, right? It's like 200 degrees. It's like a, easy bake oven in there.
Why did they need
I'm there with,
Buddy, why'd they need 6 hours?
Well, I don't know, brother. They just bicycled those tapes. I mean, I think they had 2 or 3 shows a week on.
Okay.
I mean, that's what we did when I first got there. But anyway, we filmed the TV, and I started noticing that I'm beating these guys, and I mean, I'm just pounding them, beating them. They're just feeding me these Puerto Ricans to beat, right? And so I come back from the ring, and Crazy Luke Graham's standing there, and he's old timer and old school, and I looked at him. I said, are they giving me the push? Because I didn't have a clue. He goes, giving you the push? He goes, hell, Ray Charles can see that, kid. And that was my first clue that I was, and Dickie Steinborn was there, so anyway, stayed there and worked, and it was very, very hard work. It was very hot. It was decent money. And in the meantime, Flair and Piper are flying down for the big stadium matches, right?
Yeah, I remember that.
And so that was my first big thing where Rick remembered me, but, he really remembers me now, okay? It's like, because we looked a lot alike and worked a lot. That's one thing that Buddy Rogers told me one time. He goes, kid, he goes, it's ironic, there's only been 3 of us, and he goes, we all look alike and we all work alike. Yeah. And I thought, well, hey, man, that's a pretty high compliment from that guy, right?
Yes.
So anyway, Roddy Piper would come down, and we would, it was funny. I was in my hotel room at the Panama one time, and Piper's knocking on the door, and I said, Roddy, I'm asleep. I'll come back tomorrow. And he kicks my door in, right? And he's got this girl, and she's got this coat on, and underneath the coat, she's buck naked, right?
Yeah.
And so he tells the girl to take her coat off, and so, she's sitting there, and she's, and he said, Buddy, he says, I'm going to turn this girl into a human antenna. I said, okay. Now, I mean, Roddy Piper's a superstar to me, right? I don't, he's just like I was with him a couple, the year before in Charlotte, right? I mean, he's a big star. And so he grabs the girl's boobs, and he has her put her feet together, and she throws her arms out to the side, and like she's going to do jumping jacks. And so he grabs her boobs, and like he's dialing in an antenna, he goes, Colleen Albuquerque, Colleen Albuquerque. It was hilarious.
I
guess you would have had to been there.
No, I could picture that. That's funny.
I'm 21, 22 years old, and Roddy Piper breaks my door down, with a naked girl. That was pretty cool.
Oh, I could picture that. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're
moving right along.
So you're wrestling in Puerto Rico. Were the matches especially violent?
Brother, let me tell you something. I had tore my pec out. I was in a bench press contest at the Caribe Hilton in the Condado in Puerto Rico in San Juan, and I had tore my pec out in a bench contest, and it just totally ripped. And I had did that, couldn't miss a day's work. I had cut my head, and when I was cutting my head, this El Gran Apollo had kicked my elbow, and I had sliced my head so bad that the blood was pumping from wrestling 30 minutes out in the ring. I mean, and I had not severed because it goes into your skull. There's a curve in the middle of your skull, but the vein lays there in the middle, and you can't cut it in half. So I sliced halfway through my vein, right? And every time my heart beat, the blood would pump. Well, I was scared to death and just ran up to the marks and said, please help me. And, I mean, it was, the horrifying look on their face, because every time my heart beat, the blood would squirt out 3 feet, and everybody just got covered in blood. And they sewed me up, and it got busted open the next night, and they sewed me up at ringside. Now, you just never miss a day, but you had to, look, I've been shot at, I've been stabbed. I mean, it's bad in Puerto Rico, brother, especially back then. Now, my next-door neighbor was Tonga, was Haku, and he was my tag team partner for a while. So, yeah, I've seen some really, really bad things in Puerto Rico, man.
Was it violent in Puerto Rico because that's the style the fans wanted, or were the guys you working with?
Man, the freaking people are violent, man.
So just
the people are violent. I mean, they'll pick stuff up and run you off. They'll run you off the road. They'll cut your tires every night. They'll throw rocks through your windows. They'll stab you. They'll throw shit in the ring. They'll torture you. It was eye-opening.
Were you afraid in your hotel room?
No, not in my hotel room, really, because we stayed in a nice part of San Juan. But, out in these little towns, man, it was violent. I mean, real violent.
Was it violent because it was wrestling, or if you had just been Mr. Anonymous there, would it have been violent?
No, it wasn't, going out and walking around, it wasn't violent or anything like that. It was the wrestling. It was people that came to the wrestling. And it was the angles that they did had did on television, the angles and just, that Tom Ernesto Sr. was another guy that was a genius, man. And he just had so much heat on Haku and myself, and Terry Gibbs was my partner, and all these other people. We just had a tremendous amount of heat on us.
Why'd you leave?
I kind of had a falling out with Carlos, and where were we at? We were in Cogwas. Yeah, I'll never forget this story. I was in Cogwas. It was sold out, right? I had just the night before had Gorilla Monsoon's retirement match. I had his last match, okay? And so he retired, and I think he was part owner down there. Nonetheless, we were wrestling, and I got pissed off about something. I think now by this time it started going to my head a little bit, Plus I'm wanting off that rock, It's like doing hard time. So I'm figuring, I've got this under my belt. I can go somewhere else. And I think I'd been talking to Lawler, and they wanted me to come in, so I knew I had a place to go. And so I had sent word over to Carlos that I was actually going to quit that night, right? Carlos never broke kayfabe, big baby face. He walks through the marks from the babyface dressing room all the way to my dressing room, opens the door, slams it shut, walks up to me in front of everybody and says, "If you quit," he said, "I'll kill you. I'll have you dead by tonight." And I went, Jesus Christ, okay. And walks out of the room, right?
Oh, man.
So I get through with that night. I've got my plane ticket. My wife's already took a powder off the island, right? And so my partner, Terry Gibbs, calls me. He says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm packing my stuff, buddy." I said, "I'm off this plane. I'm on the first plane in the morning." He says, "Don't go downstairs." He said, "They're circling your building." I said, "Who?" He said, "Carlos and all of them. They're circling your building." I said, "Get the hell out of here." He goes, "Don't go downstairs." So I actually had to call the police, and they followed me in a cab to the airport, and I got out of there, brother. I didn't go back for a few years.
Buddy, were they really down there? Did you see them?
Terry Gibbs said they were down there. I had no doubt they were. Hey, look, brother, they killed Brody a few years later.
Yeah.
I mean, they got the judges in their pockets. I mean, apparently they think they could get away with murder. They did it.
It's strange because I've been to Puerto Rico as a tourist, and you don't feel anything like what the wrestlers of the 80s say it was like. It's almost like two different places. But, of course, you're in the business, and it's a rough business. So it's just a little bit of a shock to me that Puerto Rico, part of it is like that.
Yeah. Well, I love Puerto Rico, and it's nice to fly over. But if I ever have to do vacation, I wouldn't go there.
Okay.
Yeah, no. When I flush my toilet here in Knoxville, it goes down to Puerto Rico. So,
buddy, when you're flying away from Puerto Rico, the plane's taking off, and you has escaped. What are you thinking?
Well, praise God, hallelujah, thank you, Jesus. I'm glad to be off of it. I was grateful for the experience, but I was just glad to get the heck out of there, man. And then I wound up going to doing the thing over in Memphis. That's when I went there the first time as a heel.
And people really started to notice you at that point.
Oh, yeah, man. By then, I've already adapted my attitude. My workability's growing every day. Now, listen, this is the first 4 years of my career, and I've been around the best from what I'm sure every wrestler will say this. But I've been around the best wrestlers in the business. I would have been stupid not to have, went out and watched and learned and copied, asked questions and picked their brains and tried to emulate, them in some form or fashion. And so, when I say that I'm getting better, it's only because I was around great talent. The Bible says iron sharpens iron. So, I was around tremendous talent. So, by this time, I go back and I'm working with Lawler and everything. We're selling out. Everything's great. Dundee's we're just, starting to make some money. So
Memphis at that time, a very, very famous territory, a lot of unique angles. Andy Kaufman. What was it like working for the Jarretts?
Jarrett was a genius. He was just a genius, and he was very good to me, paid well for a small territory like that, and yeah, I've no complaints. I love Jarrett. I spoke with him recently, and so he was always kind to me. Jerry Lawler is actually, sometimes I tell people Flair gave me the name Nature Boy, but actually the one that started calling me Nature Boy was Jerry Lawler, and that was 1983. So he's actually the one that gave me the Nature.
I've had a lot of people tell me that the Saturday morning shows, the Memphis TV, people had a lot of fun doing that show. Do you have fond memories of it?
Well, Saturday mornings, no, because it was followed by Friday nights. So there wasn't a lot of sleeping going on in Memphis in those days. Those were dark days for me, so I didn't do a lot of sleeping. But I was, always was there and did the TVs and, did what I had to do. But no, Saturday mornings weren't fun at all. They were, they were mundane at best. But it's what we had to do, to put our product out there to make money, sell the tickets. So that's what we all did. But I have fond memories of it. It was fun. All the guys sitting around and, I love the camaraderie in the dressing rooms. I miss that the most out of wrestling, driving. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go to a show here in just a little bit to see Ricky Morton. And so I just miss the dressing rooms, the talk, the closeness to the guys, and sharing stories and war stories and things of that nature. So that's what I miss.
Buddy, in Memphis back then, let's say did everyone get along in the dressing room, or were there some oddballs that didn't mix in with the other guys?
Well, I mean, everybody got along in the dressing rooms. I mean, you only rode in the car with the guys that you got along with. I mean, there was no, very rarely would you have an awkward situation where some guy was being a horse's ass and you had to ride with him. I mean, so the traveling was really fun. I always rode with Dutch Mantel or Bill Dundee, and it was really phenomenal. But everybody got along with it.
What did you think of Dutch Mantel as a talent at the time?
Oh, I thought Dutch was great. I thought he was a tremendous worker. He was in the Vietnam War. He didn't talk about it that much, but his family and my family were really, really close. So we were best buddies, man. He was he always kept me in stitches. I miss riding with Dutch. I'd miss dinner to ride with Dutch right now. I mean, he was a brilliant mind, too. Loved the business, brilliant mind, and it was just funny. One of the funniest guys I've ever been around in my life.
He never got a push in a major territory, but, in a big national territory. But I always thought watching his matches that he was underrated.
Well, Dutch didn't desire that. See, that was the thing about Dutch. Dutch was happy with his family, being in one place, raising his kids was very important to him and Kathy, his wife. And he that wasn't his gig, man. He didn't want to go out and, be a superstar or anything. He wanted to work and live in Nashville, and his kids go to school and eat supper with his family and be home at night in bed and sleep with his wife. And he didn't like the hotels and going and staying and all that. He didn't desire that. So that wasn't a desire of his heart.
Was Troy Graham?
I think it was, huh?
No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I think it was probably, I don't think it was lack of talent. I think it was a lack of drive on his part to maybe, go out and experience that. Because I think he could have done it. Because he was a great talker. He was an excellent worker. And those are two things that you don't find in a lot of people that can talk and work.
Were you in Memphis with Dream Machine Troy Graham?
Oh, yeah, Troy's my buddy, yeah.
He was good in the ring, right?
He was excellent. Yeah, he was excellent. Yeah.
He's kind of forgotten in wrestling history, but I remember he had tremendous matches.
Oh, Troy was an excellent fantastic talker. But Troy was one of those guys that didn't want to leave Memphis. Lawler, had 1,000 different gimmicks on him, Dream Machine and so on. And he just one of those guys that wanted to work when Lawler would book him and had another job and bouncer and did these other things. A lot of these guys that hang around Memphis, been there for years, just didn't have the desire to leave home and go off. They didn't like that.
How was the crowd in Mid-South Coliseum? Obviously, drew very, very well. Yeah, the intensity.
Oh, it was fantastic. I loved it. I think Memphis is probably my favorite place to work. Yeah, bar none. You know, we had the last record sellout house there. Dundee, Mantel, myself, and Lawler. We sold out 2 or 3 weeks in a row, and it hadn't been broke. It was never broke. Hogan, Flair, nobody broke it, and that was in 1986. Yeah. Hey, are we going to be able to do maybe like a part 2 on this, brother?
Of course.
Yeah, because I've got about 10 more minutes, and I'm going to have to cut out of here, okay? I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. What we're going to do is we're going to stop right now.
Okay.
Buddy, and then I am going to call you back, and we are going to do part 2, and hopefully maybe...
I will be here tomorrow and talk as long as you want to talk.
I am...
Because I see where you're going with this. You know, the lucky thing for me is that I have a photographic memory, and I can remember where I've been year to year and all this stuff. So I can kind of see that you want to kind of like, you know, analog my career year by year. So I'll be more than glad to do that with you. And even getting more depth, detailed stories and road stories and things like that, if you would like.
I would like, and so wouldn't our listeners. They're going to love it. And in fact, I'm sure if they've gotten this far, they've already loved listening to the stories that you've told. Buddy, it's been a pleasure.
God bless you, Gary. Thank you so much. Call me tomorrow, okay?
I promise I will.
Take care, my friend.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.